They told me I was overreacting. That what my best friend did was a mistake. That grief makes people do things they'd never normally do. That I needed to think about what mattered. So I cleared out my half of the condo, filed the paperwork, and started over 3 provinces away. I never asked for their forgiveness. I never needed it. I'm an air traffic controller. I spend every shift managing invisible lines in the sky, tracking aircraft by speed, altitude, heading, separation distance. 30 planes in the air at once, and I know exactly where each one is, where it's going, and when something's about to go wrong. I read patterns. I anticipate failures. I'm trained to stay completely calm when everything around me is moving too fast for anyone else to process. I should have read this one sooner. My wife Lena passed away 14 months before any of this happened. Ovarian cancer, diagnosed late, moved fast. We were together 9 years. Married for 6. She was 31. Eli was 4 when she died. My best friend, Callum, was in the waiting room the night we lost her. He'd driven 3 hours from Hamilton to be there. He gave the eulogy at her funeral because I couldn't get through it. He showed up at my place every other weekend for the first year after, took Eli to the park, watched hockey with me until 2 in the morning when I couldn't sleep. I trusted him the way you only trust maybe 1 or 2 people in your whole life. His wife, Petra, had been Lena's closest friend since university. When Lena died, Petra came apart too. She was at our place constantly that first year, bringing food, picking Eli up from daycare, sitting with me at the kitchen table on the bad nights. When I didn't know what to do with the quiet, I thought we were all just grieving together. I was wrong. It was my mother who told me. She didn't want to. You could see it on her face when I opened the door, that specific look parents get when they're about to hand you something they can't take back. She sat across from me at my kitchen table, the same table where Petra had brought me soup on the worst nights. And she said they've been together since September. September, 4 months before she was sitting in my kitchen. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I asked her how she found out. She said a mutual friend had seen them, that Callum had apparently told a few people. And one of those people thought I should know before it became common knowledge. I thanked her. I made her tea. After she left, I sat there for a long time without moving. Eli was at daycare. The house was quiet except for the refrigerator hum. I pulled out my phone and opened my text thread with Callum. 42 pages of messages going back 8 years. His name at the top of my most recent contacts. I stared at it, then put the phone face down on the table. I wasn't ready to talk to him yet, but I also wasn't going to pretend I didn't know. He called 2 days later. Didn't mention it. Asked how I was doing. Asked if Eli wanted to come to his nephew's birthday party that weekend. I said we were busy. He said okay. There was a pause at the end where something was supposed to happen and neither of us let it. He hung up. Sat there and felt the shape of what used to be the best friendship of my adult life. My sister Claire was the one who pushed for a conversation. She was always the mediator. The person in our family who believed that problems left alone got worse. That fresh air and honesty could fix most things. She texted me on a Thursday. Callum reached out to me. He wants to explain. He's not a bad person, he just. I stopped reading halfway through and put my phone in my jacket pocket. She called that evening. I picked up. He's not asking you to be happy about it, she said. He just wants a chance to talk. I know what he wants. He's still your best friend. Was. She went quiet for a moment. He was there for you for every we after Lena died. Doesn't that count for something? It counted for everything. That's what makes it what it is. She didn't have an answer to that. I heard her exhale slowly. Just think about it, she said. Please. I thought about it. I thought about it for 3 days. Then I called Callum and told him I'd meet him for coffee Saturday morning at the place near his condo. Neutral ground, public space. I didn't want to do this in either of our homes. He was already there when I arrived. Dark circles under his eyes, coffee he hadn't touched yet. He stood up when he saw me, started to say something. I held up one hand and sat down first. I know, I said. My mom told me. You don't need to explain the timeline. I want to, I don't need you to. He sat back, looked at his coffee. It wasn't something we planned. After everything with Lena, we were both wrecked. We kept ending up in the same place and, how long? It started in September. But it wasn't like that from the beginning. We didn't. Did you think about telling me? He looked up. We were trying to figure out what it even was first. Did you think about telling me? Long pause, yes. But you didn't. No. I looked at him for a moment. 9 years of friendship. I knew the way he held a coffee cup, the specific sound he made when he thought something was funny, but didn't want to admit it. The way he'd shown up at the hospital at midnight. Because I'd texted 3 words. She's not responding. I knew him the way you know. Someone after almost a decade of choosing each other. I need you to understand something, I said. I'm not angry because you fell for someone. I'm not angry because it's Petra. I'm angry because I sat in my kitchen with her on my worst nights, and talked about Lena, and the whole time, I stopped, started again. The whole time you both knew and I didn't. He flinched. That was the one that landed. That's what I needed to say, I said. Now I'm going to go. I picked up my jacket. He reached out and touched my arm, not grabbing just a hand on my sleeve. Don't do this, he said. Don't just disappear. We can figure out some version of this. There's no version, I said. And I left. My phone started the next morning. Callum, twice. Petra, once. I stared at her name on the screen for a long time before letting it ring out. My dad, which surprised me. Claire again. A friend named Doug who I hadn't talked to in 6 months, which told me the information had traveled. I answered none of them. I sat at my kitchen table with a notepad and my laptop. Eli was asleep. The house was the same as it always was. Lena's art print still on the wall, in the hallway, the ceramic mug she'd bought at a market in Quebec City still in the cabinet. I'd kept a lot of things I probably should have moved on from. The house was full of her and full of Callum, and neither of them lived here anymore. I opened my work email. Scrolled back to November. Found it. Edmonton. Air Navigation Services had reached out in the fall. An opening at the Edmonton ARTCC area control, good position, significant lateral move with upward trajectory. I'd declined. Eli was settled. His daycare was 3 blocks away. My support system was here, my support system. I drafted a reply. Said I might have reconsidered if the position was still active, or if something comparable was available. Sent it before I could talk myself out of it. The reply came back the next morning. Position had been filled, but a comparable opening was coming up at the Vancouver terminal, expected posting in 6 to 8 weeks. Was I still interested? I said yes. I called my lawyer, a woman named Diane I'd used when we did Lena's estate, and told her I needed to understand my options for relocating with a 4-year-old when there was no other custodial parent. She told me to come in. You're the sole custodial parent, she said, spreading out Lena's will and our existing documents. There's no other party withstanding to contest a move. Legally you can relocate. You'd want to notify the appropriate people, but there's no one who can stop you. Her parents, I said. Lena's parents. They'd been in Eli's life. Her mother especially. That's a different kind of conversation, Diane said. But legally your position is clean. I drove directly from her office to Lena's parents' house. Her mother Ruth opened the door. She took one look at my face and said, "Come in, sit down." She knew something had shifted. I told her about Callum and Petra. I told her about Vancouver. I told her I was taking Eli. She was quiet for a very long time. Then she said, "What do you need from us?" That was when I almost lost it. Not at the coffee shop with Callum. Not sitting alone at my kitchen table. Right there, in Ruth's kitchen. Because she had just asked the right question in the middle of the wrong year. "I need to know you're going to be okay," I said. "I need to know Eli is still going to have his grandparents, even if we're not around the corner." "We'll fly," she said. "Simple as that, we'll fly to see him and you call us whenever." I drove home and finished the paperwork I'd already started in my head. I didn't tell Callum I was leaving. I didn't tell anyone except my mother, Claire, Ruth and my manager at work. Claire came to my place the night before the movers arrived. She sat on the floor of Eli's half-packed room watching him arrange stuffed animals on top of a box, and she said very quietly, so he couldn't hear, "I think you're doing the right thing. I just want you to know, I'm not sure I could do it." "You could," I said. "You'd be surprised what you can do when you need to." The movers came Thursday morning. Eli thought the truck was excellent. He wanted to ride in it. He asked the driver 3 questions before I got him redirected to his car seat. We were on the Trans-Canada by noon. I didn't call Callum. I sent one text, 3 words. Moving to Vancouver. I blocked his number before I saw if he responded. Petra same. The small cluster of mutual friends who'd been texting with increasing urgency over the past 2 weeks. One by one blocked. It wasn't satisfying, it wasn't dramatic. It was just quiet, and the quiet was what I needed. Eli fell asleep somewhere past Kenora. I drove through the Shield with the radio low, and thought about load factors. About how a structure holds its shape under stress. About how in my job when something is at risk of failure, the protocol isn't to wait and see, it is to act, to redirect, to put distance between the aircraft and the thing they're approaching too fast. I was just following protocol. We stopped in Regina overnight. Eli ate a truly enormous amount of waffles at the hotel breakfast. And told the server her hair was cool, which was true. We shared a room and he slept diagonally across the bed, and somehow still ended up pressed against my arm by morning. Vancouver in late spring is something. I'd forgotten that. The mountains visible from the apartment window, the salt in the air even blocks from the water. The way the light hits differently out here than it does in Ontario. The apartment was on the small side. 2 bedrooms, decent kitchen, a building with a playground in the courtyard. Eli approved of the playground. That was the main evaluation criteria. The first 2 weeks were brutal in the way first weeks always are. New position at a new facility, new protocols to integrate, new colleagues who knew each other and didn't know me yet. Eli cried the 3rd night. Said he wanted his house back, his room, his daycare friends. I sat on the edge of his bed and didn't offer easy answers. "I know," I said. "It's hard right now. It's going to be hard for a little while. Then it's going to be normal. And then it's going to be good." "How do you know?" Because that's how it works. I promise. He didn't believe me. He was 4. He went to sleep anyway. My sister texted regularly. My mother called every Sunday. Ruth video called on Fridays to talk to Eli. She'd learned which dinosaurs he was currently obsessed with, and always had one new fact ready. He'd run to the tablet the second he heard her ringtone. The new facility was good. The team was solid. A crew chief named Philip who ran a tight sector and didn't waste words. A senior controller named Astrid who became the closest thing to a work friend I'd had in years. She'd moved to Vancouver from the East Coast 5 years earlier. It gets easier, she told me at the end of my second week. First 6 months you still see the old place in your head. After that you start seeing this one instead. Looking forward to that, I said. It goes fast, she said. Especially if you have a kid. They just absorb everything. She wasn't wrong. Eli started daycare in June. New place, new kids, new routine. He came home the second day with a drawing of a whale, and the information that his new friend Theo had a dog. This was apparently very important. He asked if we could get a dog. I said maybe eventually. He accepted this with unexpected grace. By week 3, he stopped asking about going back. The calls from Ontario didn't. My phone, the old number I'd kept active on a secondary line, mostly out of morbid habit, logged 87 blocked contact attempts in the first month. I checked the number occasionally, the way you check an old wound just to see how the healing is going. Then I stopped checking. The number expired in August and I didn't renew it. Claire told me in July that Callum had asked about me. She'd told him she didn't have details. I texted back thank you, she replied. He seemed genuinely gutted. I didn't respond to that part. Gutted is a feeling. I understood that. I also understood that feelings don't undo decisions, and his decisions had been made. While I was busy surviving the worst year of my life. We were not the same kind of gutted. My work performance in the first 6 months was the best review I'd had in 4 years. New environment, higher pressure, more complex traffic. And I was performing better, not worse. My crew chief pulled me aside in August and said the team leads were watching. Said there was a position as a designated check and controller that would open up in the new year if I was interested in the training track. I said yes without thinking about it twice. The raise was significant. Enough that I could restructure what I'd set aside for Eli's future. RESP contributions, proper registered savings, the kind of planning that actually looks far enough ahead. We went to the ocean the first Saturday in September. Just the two of us. A bag of sandwiches from a deli near the apartment. A plastic bucket Eli insisted on bringing in case he found something. He spent an hour collecting rocks. Very serious about it, occasionally holding one up and asking me to confirm it was a good rock. I confirmed every one of them. We came home with 17 rocks and sand in the car seats, and he slept the full drive back. I sat in the parking garage after he fell asleep, and let myself feel something for the first time in months. Not grief, not anger. Just the specific texture of a day that was ours, only ours, built entirely from scratch. Claire came to visit in October. She stayed 5 days, slept on the couch, let Eli drag her to every playground in the neighborhood, ate ramen with me late at night after he was in bed. On the last evening she said, I want you to know it's different at home now. People aren't taking sides so much as they're just not saying much anymore. I don't need them to take sides. I know, I'm just telling you it's quieter. She turned her glass. Callum and Petra are still together. He moved into her place. I nodded. Does that bother you? I thought about it honestly. No, I said. It bothered me that they lied while I was in it. Now they're just two people doing whatever they're doing. And it's not my situation anymore. She looked at me for a moment. You're genuinely okay, aren't you? I genuinely am. I wasn't sure. I hoped. But I wasn't sure. Ruth and her husband flew out in November. They stayed in an Airbnb around the corner. Came over every day. Eli showed them the ocean, the rocks he'd collected, the drawing he'd made of a whale at daycare that was now on the refrigerator. His grandfather let Eli explain the entire plot of a dinosaur movie over dinner, start to finish, without interrupting once. I watched Ruth watch her grandson and thought about Lena, the way I always did. But it didn't hollow me out the way it used to. It just felt like love with a layer of sadness underneath, which is maybe just what love looks like after a while. November brought the formal offer for the check controller training. I signed the paperwork on a Tuesday afternoon and drove directly to Eli's daycare. Picked him up early, took him for ice cream. He got vanilla with sprinkles in a cup because cones were according to him a trap. Good day, he asked, swinging his feet under the table. Really good day, I said. He nodded seriously. Same, Theo's dog came to school. How was the dog? Excellent, he said. Name was Biscuit. I laughed. Actually laughed, the kind that's just real, no effort required. He grinned at me, pleased that he'd caused it. I started dating again in December. Carefully, slowly, with no great urgency. A woman named Simone, a landscape architect I met at a community event for parents at Eli's daycare. She was kind, clear about what she was looking for, patient with the parts of my situation that were still being organized. We went for dinner twice before she asked about Eli's mom. I told her. The short version. Cancer, 14 months before any of this. Eli was 4 when it happened. She listened without trying to fix it. That was the thing about Simone. She didn't rush to comfort or fill the silence with the wrong words. She just sat with it. We went for a third dinner. A fourth. She met Eli in February. He was extremely focused on showing her his rock collection. She asked informed questions about each one. He decided she was, in his words, pretty good. I told her, on our 6th or 7th evening out, what had happened with Callum and Petra. She asked one question: did you give yourself time to be angry, or did you just go straight to logistics? I thought about it. Logistics, I said. That's not necessarily wrong, she said. Just means it might still be in there somewhere. She was probably right. I didn't tell her that. Eli turned 5 in March. I decorated the apartment with a dinosaur theme so specific and thorough that Claire, who was visiting for the occasion, said it looked like a museum. 8 kids, the backyard of Simone's house, because she'd offered and her yard was bigger and had actual grass. Theo came. Biscuit did not come but was discussed extensively. Eli stood in the middle of the yard in a Velociraptor t-shirt and blew out his candles and looked up at me with chocolate icing on his chin and said, "This is the best." He meant the party. He also maybe meant something larger. I chose to take it as both. The divorce back in Ontario. And I say divorce loosely, since Callum and I were not married. But what ended was as real as any legal agreement. Finalized itself in its own way. Callum stopped trying to reach me sometime around January. My mutual friends in Ontario gradually sorted themselves into 2 categories. People who let it go and people I'd quietly already let go. No drama, no formal declarations. Just distance, and then more distance, and then a point where the distance was just geography. My phone stayed quiet. My new number went to exactly 9 people. My mother, Claire, Ruth, my crew chief, Eli's daycare, his pediatrician, Diane my lawyer, Simone and one old friend from college named Ivan, who had never been part of the social cluster that collapsed and seemed genuinely baffled that anything had happened at all. Ivan texted in April, "Heard you're in Vancouver. Good move." He meant the weather. I replied, "Yeah, good move." I meant all of it. Work by spring had settled into something that felt like mine. The check controller training was intensive. Additional qualification exams, evaluations, a formal sign-off process. I went through it methodically, the way I did everything. My evaluator told me after the final assessment that I was one of the cleanest trainees she'd put through in 3 years. Precise, she said. Calm under pressure. Excellent situational awareness. I thanked her. Didn't mention that I'd had a lot of practice staying calm while things were actively falling apart. 1 year. It lands differently than you expect. Not like a milestone, more like a morning where you realize you can't actually remember the last time you thought about it. I woke up that day to Eli calling from the kitchen that he was hungry, and the cereal was in the wrong cupboard, and could I please fix it? I fixed it. We ate breakfast. He told me a very long story about something that had happened at school, involving a substitute teacher and a map of Canada that I followed with genuine interest. I dropped him at school. He waved from the door. I drove to work with the radio on, mountain view in the rear view, coffee in the cup holder, phone in my pocket, no calls pending. At some point that afternoon I remembered what day it was. Thought about that coffee shop in Hamilton, the look on Callum's face, my hand on my jacket as I stood up to go. The specific clarity of walking out of something that had stopped being safe. And then I thought about Eli and his 17 rocks. About Ruth knowing every dinosaur fact. About Simone asking the right question on a 3rd date. About a year of building something with my hands, piece by piece, in a city I'd chosen instead of stumbling into. Warren. That was my father's name, had said. At some point in those early phone calls I'd mostly ignored. You can't just run from your problems. I hadn't run from my problems. I'd made a decision about what I was willing to carry and what I wasn't. Those are different things. My phone buzzed that afternoon. Diane, final file closure on all outstanding matters. No further actions pending, you're fully clear. I typed back, "Thank you," set the phone face down. The mountains outside the facility window were doing what they always did in the late afternoon. Catching the light. In a way that looked improbable. Almost staged, like a desktop background someone chose, because it seemed too beautiful to be real. I'd stopped noticing it for a while. I'd started noticing it again. That evening I picked up Eli from after-school care. He was mid-sentence when I walked in, telling another kid something urgent about ankylosauruses. And he glanced up, held up one finger without breaking his sentence, and finished his thought before he came to me. He was 5. He had opinions and timing, and a whole separate world I only got glimpses of. Lena would have been obsessed with this version of him. I thought that every day we walked to the car. He held my hand and kept talking. I asked follow-up questions in all the right places. The mountains were somewhere ahead of us in the dark, and the air smelled like salt, and Douglas fir. And whatever is uniquely specific to this corner of the country. That I hadn't had a name for until we'd been here long enough to recognize it. They'd wanted me to forgive so they could stop feeling bad. To absorb it so the shape of the group could hold. To be steady, which I always was, which was always the expectation, so that everyone else's mess could land somewhere soft. I chose not to be that surface anymore. I chose 17 rocks on a beach and vanilla ice cream on a Tuesday. And my son finishing a sentence before he came to find me. I chose this, and I would choose it again every single time.